So the biggest political event in North Korea, its Key Party Congress, is currently underway. And held just once every 5 years, it's the ninth time the Workers' Party Congress has convened under the Kim family's decades-long rule and offers us a glimpse into the regime's political and military goals over the next 5 years. For more on this, we're joined today by Matthew David Jenkins, Associate Professor at the Department of Political Science at Gyeongsang National University. Professor Jenkins, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
So the regime, North Korea, has yet to send a clear message to Seoul or Washington at the party congress yet. Some say Kim is being cautious ahead of the potential geopolitical shifts that could follow a meeting between Trump and China Xi in April. What's your take on this?
Yeah, sure. They haven't really said anything yet, and usually they typically do make remarks about the relationships with other countries, so it is unusual, as you point out. However, this party congress has been a little bit less forthcoming on details compared to the last one. Details, for example, on specific economic policy targets and things like this. So it does kind of follow a pattern in terms of just being a little bit more hesitant on revealing the full details. So yeah, certainly they don't want to say anything that's going to trip them up later, depending on how the talks with Trump and Xi play out. And so I think it's just a bit of cautious strategic sort of positioning and sort of just waiting to see how that plays out to figure out what their next step is going to be.
I see, and Kim Jong-un has been re-elected to the top post of the ruling Workers' Party. What does this mean for the regime and Kim's leadership?
Sure. So this signals that Kim Jong-un is further consolidating power, right, and strengthening his leadership and reaffirming his authority and right to rule as the a successor of Kim Jong-il, right? And I think we're going to see further changes and reshuffling of the cabinet as he further consolidates power.
Right, and Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, has been promoted to a department head at the ruling Workers' Party. And North Korea also appears to be replacing political and military figures in Kim Jong-un's inner circle. Does this point to a generational shift, perhaps, and could it change the power structure within Pyongyang's elite?
Yeah, so age is important. Obviously, age is super important in terms of determining the party hierarchy, the military hierarchy, government hierarchy, et cetera. But I think I would see this less as a generational shift per se, and more as a signal of Kim Jong-un consolidating power under people who are loyal to him, like people who owe their status and their power and the position to him rather than the previous successor. A lot of the older folks will have still ties to the previous leader, Kim Jong-il, right? And so that could create a potential for conflicts, right, between them and Kim. And so he wants to have people around him who are loyal to him, who owe their life to him, and therefore will be completely obedient and will not give him pushback. And so I think that's what this is really about. Kim Yo-jong is sort of his enforcer, and it makes sense that he would want to elevate his position in order to further secure his power and make sure that there's no question about who is in charge and who makes the decisions, right, in this regime.
I see. There's also been a lot of tension on Kim Jong-un's teenage daughter, Chue, whether she might show up at the Congress or even get some sort of a formal role. South Korea's intelligence agency recently said she may be being groomed as a likely successor. What do you make of her growing public profile and possible influence?
Yeah, so I mean, she's been appearing at parades and things like this. So sort of, it does appear that he is grooming her as his successor. Nothing is formal yet. Nothing has been announced, and that's how it works for him too. His name didn't even really appear until much later in his life, right? And so I would expect a similar thing here. Although the NIS did say that he has chosen her as a successor. We don't have official recognition of that, and it's kind of weird because she was not at the party congress, and so it is a bit odd. But that does seem to be the path that they're going. However, I think it's a little bit too early to really say that for sure. And it is also odd because, although there is obviously the bloodline, that's the most important thing, but there's also the sort of patriarchal culture, right, which focuses on the male lineage. And so that might be an interesting sort of thing to see how that plays out as we go forward here.
And this is the 9th Workers' Party Congress under the Kim family's rule, and many expect Kim to lay out new military goals. What should we be watching for?
Yeah, so certainly you want to be looking for any changes on stances towards North Korea's neighbors, towards the United States, Russia, China, right, and Southeast Asian nations as well. And I mean, obviously, you want to be looking for changes on nuclear policy, looking for new capabilities, hypersonic missiles, right, capabilities that enable it to strike at the United States or Japan or its other allies, right? Certainly want to be looking for that. In addition to changes in succession, right? As we said earlier, that will have important implications for its military policy as well to see how that succession plan will be laid out, because that will affect the stability of the regime, right? And its strategic goals in the region.
Right, and we earlier talked about the April meeting between President Xi and Donald Trump. Do you think that could increase the possibility of North Korea's Kim Jong-un's meeting with President Trump? Do you think North Korea
certainly it's possible, depending on how it plays out, right? China has kind of an edge. Trump most of his economic policy is based on the tariffs, and that's kind of taken the blow from the U.S. Supreme Court, which has at least undercut one of the legal basis for his tariffs. And so China's got kind of an edge right now. There's of course the big issue would be Taiwan and how what kind of a stance China is going to take on Taiwan, and of course the U.S. is probably not going to back down very easily on that. So it's certainly going to making sort of lending out a hand to North Korea might be another way to play the edge against China, given the U.S. is a relatively weak position, and so that could be in the cards, right? To sort of go around from the other side, and that's kind of what Trump likes to do, right? You would think he would take the obvious step, but no, he sort of goes around. Oh, maybe I'll make a sort of outreach to North Korea, and that could sort of undermine China's current strategic advantage.
Right, I guess we'll have to see how that meeting goes. All right, Professor Jenkins, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.